And that's the part of you that will sabotage your progress, your process, your thinking, by flooding you with different symptoms that hold you back. And when we explain this to guys, they're like, oh my gosh, I can see that. That's my part X. And that is one of the biggest breaks that I specifically have helped guys start to realize what's going on. And when you can spot this, it's almost like name it to tame it. They start to see that they can fight back against that part of themselves.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Benjamin Owen, who will share how we can overcome ourselves to live the ultimate life. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Jeremy Bentham. The rarest of all human qualities is consistency. Just like money compounds, our life compounds. And compounding can go in two directions, up and down. So the question is, are you consistently doing what you need to do to compound your life in the direction you want it to go? Or do you sabotage yourself? The truth is, we all do. Today, we're going to chat about that and some ideas of why that is and how to overcome it. It's a lot easier than you think it is. We don't need to work hard to achieve this either. Imagine that. Work less, make more. It's possible, and we'll show you how. Benjamin Owen is a professional coach specializing in personal and professional transformation. He is the co-creator of the Awaken Man Project, a powerful men's-only coaching group that helps high-performing men actualize their potential through learning from other men. He also created the Fastest Way to Fitness system in his 20s, which has helped hundreds of people transform their life through transforming their body. Let's meet Ben and learn from him. Welcome to Richer Soul, Benjamin Owen. It's great to have you join us today.
I'm so grateful to be here, Rocky. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
That's a great question, because money in my household was an evil. It was something that was the root of arguments, disputes. It had a really negative charge in my household. All the disagreements between my parents were about money. And I think that actually only when I got to around about my mid-20s that I realized how much of a negative perception I had around money. I was taught that money was the root of greed. I was taught that my mum had no money, my dad had all the money, and equally that money had to be worked really hard to achieve. And it was something that would go away, because something that we didn't have when I was growing up was a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a heck of a lot of love. It sounds really kind of quite cute to say that, but at the same time, we absolutely didn't. We didn't have a lot of money in my household, but we were very resourceful. We had lots of fun, had a great upbringing, and there was a lot of love in both my households, my parents' households. So I was very lucky to have great parenting. But around money was a really, really big struggle for me, especially in my early parts of my career. Like I earned money very, very young. I think I had 2 or 3 paper rounds where I used to cycle all over the local county delivering papers up hills. And then even when I was around about 16 years old, I'd work exhaustive hours in a local kitchen. So I actually was a young kid with quite a lot of money. I actually had a lot of money, and that was quite cool because I knew that I could work hard for it.
Do you still think you have to work hard for money?
Oh, God, I knew that question might have been coming from that. I think it's, do you know what? I think it's something that I've actually had to disassociate, is that money has to be like hard. You have to work long hours and add time to money, like creation of money. And that was something that I had to really, really work on, because both of my parents demonstrated that you worked hard and you got rewarded with money. There was no investments, or there was no blueprint for how to go and invest money, how to create money with thought instead of graft, So I think that something that I really did have to learn and find in mentorship and coaching and like a rich dad sort of figure in my life, that it didn't have to just be a blue collar work to get money. So yeah, I think I'm still trying to dissociate from that. So yeah.
It's funny because I think when you make money without a lot of work, you feel guilty. You're like, wait a minute, am I like, it's almost like you're cheating, or you're stealing, or you're doing something wrong there because it was just easy to make money. And I think that's a lot of cultural attitudes towards that.
Yeah, I love there's a fable of the magician and the mule. I tell this to a lot of clients: the magician and the mule, and the mule is the man or the woman who pushes the plow and has gratification over how many steps they've taken and how hard they've worked and how many hours they've spent plowing the fields. And the magician comes along and attaches his worth or her worth to impact, and just waves a wand, and the fields get plowed straight away. I often use that in so many different permutations, but for years I just would base a lot of my self-worth on how long I'd worked for the day. When I opened my first gym, I would go in there at 5 a.m. and I wouldn't leave until 9. It was a pattern for me, and actually having seen both my parents do that, I think so. Yeah, it was a big thing. Working hard for money is something that I definitely see in so many people, and it's actually something that in the space of coaching, I've seen so many people make massive inroads into, because a lot of the guys I've worked with over the past 10 years have had the operator versus the owner mindset. They've come in and they're the business operator, and what they actually need to do is become the owner. And that's one of the big distinctions I see. Guys who really make big progress in the work I've done with them is making that shift.
I think the same shift happens when you walk into the C-suite. It's no longer about being the manager and doing the work. It's about leading the team and being able to do that. And I remember, I forget where I read the one story, but it was some tech company. And the CEO comes around, and there's this guy who just stands there and is looking out the window constantly. And the CEO is getting mad because all he's doing all the time is looking out the window. And he goes to his manager. He's like, what's going on here? He's like, that's the guy who made us 80% of our profit, right? Because he's actually thinking about what's going on, and instead of just grinding. And so eventually what they had to do was give him an office and hide him away so he could look out the window with nobody bothering him or getting upset. It's not fair. All he's doing is staring. But it's that processing power, because I think people really struggle with thinking. The other thing that was interesting, though, is in spite of the struggles with money, there was so much love. In spite of the fights with money. And so I think this is where also people get those two connected. Oh, I have to show love for my family by working hard and making money, but no, you don't. It's time that's actually much more important. And I think that's another area where we kind of get it wrong.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize how much love I had from my parents until, gosh, when I had children. And just speaking about my upbringing to my mother and my father, and about what they did for us, what they did with us, and the fun that we had. And I think sometimes when I've worked with people, they've missed that. They might have actually had loads of, like my partner Poppy, her mother used to buy her gifts, and they wanted for nothing, but they didn't have her time. They didn't have their mother's time because she felt so guilty that they were in childcare that she used to buy them things. And I just see that so often, is that, as much as the money story was an issue, it was such a, I come from a very, very wholehearted background. And I think that's something I've noticed so much over the last couple of years, is that so many people I work with are so busy trying to make money, and they forget about the most important thing in their families and house.
It's true. I mean, you spend your life making money, and then you spend your money getting health. And that's why we talk about living in harmony, of creating that balance. And I noticed that early in my career. I remember there was one time, it's a vice president who, companies constantly downshift and change, and he got, we'll call it laid off, but let go, so to speak, gently. And he's like, oh, this is so nice. Now I get to go finally spend time with my kids and grandkids. And I didn't say a word to him, but in the back of my head, I'm just looking at him going, your kids don't know you. They don't give a crap about you. And you've missed life. Like, maybe you can make friends with your grandkids now, but you're probably even not in the mindset to be able to talk to them at their level because you've forgotten how to live. And that was a deep impression. I think that was probably late 20s, early 30s. And I'm like, I am never doing this.
Yeah, I was quite fortunate. I was asked what I wanted to do at the age of like 5. And I said to my mother, I was like, I want to have a fat camp. And my mum asked me at the age of 5, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to have a fat camp. It was, crazy. And by the age of 21, I had a very successful outdoor fitness boot camp. It was, it was like a quote unquote overnight success. It was really, really popular very, very quickly. And what I would do is I would work with like a massive people, like 100 people in the boot camp. And then I would have one-to-one personal training clients. I'd drive to their house and I would do training in their house. And I got to meet some very, very wealthy, successful people. And I loved working with them. And like you said there, absolutely fascinating. They'd forgone so much of their body and their health to achieve the success. And then all of a sudden they were just super worried about their health. And I think a big thing that I noticed in that space was that it absolutely, like a good friend of mine said, people value their health. They also put a value on it. And sometimes I could charge, quite high fees because so many people needed to pay that much to, like, one of my wealthiest clients. He was very, very successful guy. And I said, do you know what? The personal training? He says, Ben, your personal training is expensive. And I said, do you know what? It's probably not expensive enough, because he would still pay me a high fee, but he wouldn't take action. And I think there was a big, so like even in my early parts of my 20s, I realized the value of something that I find very, very easy, which was health. So yeah, go on. You're going to share that, Rocky.
How did you get him to take action? Or did you not?
Honestly, this is my, I am wholeheartedly, that was my biggest learning curve as a young professional coach. I tried everything, every single penny that he invested in me. I spent on courses, mentorships, certifications, everything, learning about behavior change, about all sorts. I went to the depths of nutritional therapy to learn what was going wrong, especially with this guy, because I had a really great attachment to him. He's a really good friend, is still a good friend now. And he didn't get any results. And I can hand on heart say that I invested every penny trying to help him get results. But it was one thing, there's a famous saying in psychology, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And it's one, but the light must be willing to change. And it's like, it's this idea that no matter how great a coach, how great a consultant, how great a therapist you are, the person absolutely needs to want to change. And that was something I have dealt with all the way through, especially my personal training career and into my coaching career.
It's funny. I used to listen to Ramit Shetty a long time ago. And I remember him telling this story. He was in front of, I think, like, they were experts in the health space. So not like coaches, but like academics and everything. And he was talking about money and so forth and kind of the similarities. And his comment to this group was, if education was the answer and knowledge was the answer, you all wouldn't be so fat because they were the experts. He said, that's the last time they invited me there. It's not the knowledge. And I think this is where people get it wrong, because it's funny when I see a lot of people who want to get started in coaching or talk about it. I need certificates. Certificates don't get you anything. I don't know I don't even know what the word for it is. And we kind of talked about it before the interview, just because you go meet somebody or you do something doesn't give you that depth of understanding of truly kind of what's going on beneath the surface and how to get people to take action, because you had all this knowledge and yet.
Yeah. And actually just like a reflection on the coaching industry, like, both of us passionate about that industry. When I first started coaching, I opened a gym when I was around about 23. It was super successful, had great clients. And I realized that I could train them hard in the gym as many times as week as they wanted to. So they could come as many times as they wanted to my big group sessions. But the most of the heavy lifting was done in the consultation room. And I was doing this thing called coaching, which I kind of obviously knew what was. I just used to sit with them for hours on end. Sit with hey, Rocky, how you doing? Oh, yeah, things are going. Hey, come in the consultation room. We'd sit and we'd have a conversation. And I would sit and just listen to people. And I realized that I was coaching. And when I was about 25, I was like, actually, I might formalize this as a career, because I'm actually enjoying this more than the training. And I feel it's got more, like I was saying before, efficacy. I think it's got way more power than flogging someone in the gym. You can create way more behavior change. Sounds really, sadistic. But what I noticed is I did thousands of hours of sitting with people, just listening and coaching and supporting and challenging. And I think this is what's happening now. And I see this more and more, especially in the coaching spaces. People think, oh yeah, coaching's easy. It's just about telling someone what to do or just listening. And they realize it really is a huge expertise. And that was my background, just listening to professional people talk about their body transformations. And when we would sit in the consult room, it was never about weight loss. It was never about food, and it was never about fitness. It was never about those things. It was always about all of the things that they would get in the way of them getting results. And that was the biggest kind of payoff from my 20s, really.
So how did you get them over all the things that were in the obstacles in the way?
That's a great question. There were many different ways. And so the thing is that I think there was a couple of things that a lot of people needed. But first of all, they would need a very achievable short-term goal. So even with the business model itself, like when we first started, we said, lose a stone or two in 12 weeks. And we used to get people in. We used to get people in 12 weeks, 3 months. Okay, I can do that. 1 to 2 stone, I can do that. And one day I went into the team and I rubbed my hand and said, hey guys, we're going to do the same thing in 8 weeks. And the team were like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And actually the results that we got, the frequency of the results that we got improved. More people got results faster. and stayed longer when we shortened the front end offer. Then one day I went in and said, hey team, we're gonna do the same thing in 6 weeks. We're gonna say to people, you're gonna lose over a stone in 6 weeks. And we used to have people flooding through the doors to come and do that. Why? Because it was so achievable. They wanted, so it was give them what they want, then give them what they need. And what I found is that people were playing a game, especially in nutrition, where they didn't know the rules. They didn't know the fundamentals. And when I realized that it wasn't just about education. It was a kind of like education and implementation dance. And that's what I just help people do in the first part of that. And like whether they came in for a body transformation or professional coaching, I just knew that getting them energy from a body transformation was always the first place to start. So yeah, so what they actually needed was just a long-term approach to this, a sustainable one. And that's what they got. And we got some incredible, we still do. I still own the business. So it's like, we still get incredible results in that business.
All right, just for the listeners, 1 stone is about 14 pounds. So in the US, you don't know stone.
I can just see doing the calculations, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in the UK, it's different. And so it's understanding the language of what that is. So 14 pounds in 6 weeks is a lot. That's a pretty healthy weight loss and a quick. You mentioned it's because people don't understand the rules of the game and nutrition. And even within that game, I see so many different ways of doing it based on just, everyone's got their program. And then on top of that, I think as you get older, certain things work for certain people, don't work for other people. So just really quickly, can you cover the rules of nutrition? Like what should we be focused on?
Yeah, that's a great point. I love this saying is like methods are many, principles are few. Methods may change, but principles never do. And like that was taught to me by a guy called Owen Cosgrove. He owns one of the most successful gyms in the States. He's a really, really good guy. And he said like learn the principles of nutrition. And like there were some principles that people just didn't want to adhere to, like calories. So if you eat more than you burn, you're going to gain weight, and the opposite. So you've got to be able to achieve that, but how you go about that is often the methods. And the second thing was like, we used to have so many people applying to come in, and they would sit with us for an hour and we'd talk. And one of the questions is like, how many grams of protein does an exercising person have to have in a day? And 5% of people could give me an answer that was somewhere near what the actual amount was. People just weren't educated.
I'm thinking about, for me, about 135.
He's right on. Well done, Rocky. Yeah. So right on. I think this was pre-Instagram generation as well. So like I was doing this 10 years ago. So this was just before like Reels and TikTok was big. So I think this kind of information is becoming more popular. So yeah, that was the big thing, is like we taught them the principles of nutrition about like how much water to consume, how much protein, and they could actually empower themselves to make long lasting change. So that was a big fundamental of what I've taught to clients for a long time.
So we've talked a lot about your 20s. That was a while ago though, right?
Yeah.
What has been the recent journey for you the past few years?
Yeah, if you'd have asked me at the end of my 20s, would you still be in fitness for the rest of your life? I probably would have said yes. I loved being in fitness. Fitness for me, body transformation for me was one of the best occupations. Watching somebody come in feeling a lack of confidence, they were worried about their health, they had problems even like taking their clothes off in front of their partner, all of those major problems in their relationships or their energy. Watching someone transform that was just so magical. It was so amazing. But I got to this point where when the pandemic hit in 2020, my gym closed. My gym closed for pretty much a year and a half. And in that space, I'd never had that space. We talked about working hard before. I'd never stopped for that long. I never stopped, and I got a chance to think, oh, hang on a second, this is my first mountain, and there's a book called The Second Mountain, and I realized that albeit that was my first mountain to climb, my impact I wanted to have, my ripple effect was I wanted to help people transform across their lives. And equally, round about the same time of turning 30, I got married and divorced in a year. And I got married. I was still a workaholic. I had a blueprint that I did all the work, provided, and we were going to have children. And my partner turned around to me and said, listen, I don't want children. I don't love you anymore. You're a workaholic. You actually annoy me, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, there was some massive changes needed. It's almost like an existential crisis. I was like, right, okay, I'm actually going to have to rebuild my life. And I realized as a man that when you go through something like that, I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel broken, nor did I feel that in a place of like pity but I did feel a lot of shame that I had this, what I thought was a perfect relationship and it ended. And trying to find a way to fix that, trying to find a way to go and have support through that process was one of the most difficult experiences in my life. People said, "Oh, go to a therapist." So I went to a female therapist. It didn't work for me. I was spending an extortionate amount of money. It wasn't getting me anywhere. I went to various men's groups. So I went to physical in-person groups of men, and they weren't my people. They were anti-establishment guys that weren't in business. There were a lot of guys that were there like in yoga pants. I love yoga. Think the world of the great people. They weren't my people. I wanted to talk about business. I wanted to talk about relationships. I wanted to talk about being a man, being a father. And those spaces they just didn't fit with who I was and what I wanted. And so I said to my mentor at the time, listen, I want to find a men's group that could support me through this time. And he said, well, why don't you create it? And so we created it. We created the Awaken Man. We created something that was a space where guys could go and they could learn about all the things that they needed to fix the gaps or the bits that were not functioning well in their personal performance, in their career, in their leadership, in order to be the guy that they were capable of being. And then that was it, really. That was like it was a big push. And that work has spanned the last 6 years.
So, and it's funny because I've noticed this, and I have this conversation all the time. When you go to self-development programs, the majority of the people in the room are business owners. And even when, I mentioned Tony Robbins before, you go to Tony Robbins, a lot of the people are employees or people that are guests of somebody who have transformed. And most of those people they have fun for 3 days and then nothing happens. I don't know what it is, but it seems like business owners and entrepreneurs are just wired a little bit differently or do things differently. And maybe that's what makes it's the chicken and the egg. I think that's what makes them business owners. And it makes them want to take action. I think that's the biggest thing. They know they have to constantly take action. At least that's what I've found. I don't know what you have seen.
I think it was like Michael Gerber from the E-Myth. And he say like your business is a direct reflection of you as a person. And I think that, I've heard that in different permutations before, like your business will grow as much as you're willing to grow. I think I've noticed that, especially as a coach, like I can go as deep with a client as deep as I've been. And because I've done so much personal work and so much therapy, so much work on myself, I can be in some very, very hard conversations with clients, and it's been effective as part of being a great leader. So yeah, I think great business owners, great leaders, absolutely understand that you actually need to do this work, because this is the stuff that holds you back. And I always think about it like the real simple analogy of you're trying to drive your car. You can accelerate as much as you want with your goals and your targets and your KPIs of where you want to go. But if you've got something on the brakes, it only takes a bit of braking and you don't go very you don't go far fast. So those breaks can be stories and experiences and blueprints from the past that are no longer serving you. So that's kind of like what I've always seen coaching as.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. And so I heard this great analogy about brakes and race cars. Brakes allow you to go faster because if you're on a speedway and you don't have brakes, when you come into the turn, if you can't slow down, that means you can't speed up to get to the turn. So if you've got brakes and you know how to use them and when to use them, you can go super fast when the road's wide open. And then to slam on the brakes when you're coming up to a curve and slow down and appropriately take the curve. I think what you're talking about is people are applying their brakes on the straightaway, right? And so they don't even get up to speed to know when to slow down and do that appropriately.
I love that metaphor because I used to race go-karts and I was always told off for going too fast for too long and not slowing down at the right time. And that is something I notice inherently in men, inherently in men and women, but they just don't have that off switch. They go, go, go. And something that one of my old business partners, he actually got lymphatic cancer. He actually really struggled. And he said that one of the big things that he had to learn through his cancer journey is that there's three speeds: there's go, there's slow, and there's stop. But especially with A-type personalities, people that naturally push themselves really hard, sometimes one of the most successful things is helping them go a bit slower. But I think what happens is sometimes that they've only got this go speed because they've got so many things in the past they're either trying to run away from, trying to prove, trying to overcome. And that's where when you dig a little bit deeper, you help people, you move way quicker, way longer, and way easier as well.
When you're digging deeper, what do you usually find?
This came to me probably in the last 2 years. So I reached out to a guy called Phil Stutz. And if you've seen the Netflix documentary, Stutz, he's with Jonah Hill. I read his book called The Tools, and I was just in awe. I was like, it spoke to me. It was a set of coaching tools that really helped me do coaching without having to become a therapist. It was like working with clients' struggles in the moment. And I just found it so powerful. So if you're listening and you're a coach, just check it out. It's The Tools. Anyway, it wasn't Phil that got back in touch. It was Barry Michaels, his business partner and co-coach, co-author of his book. And we did a session with him and he talked. And anyway, so I thought he was going to come on and talk about the tools and these different tools that you can use to help you in your life, which he did do. But he spent the first 20 minutes of the session talking about this thing called Part X. Now, he told us in that 20 minutes about this part of us that is there to, quote unquote, F up our life. He used the F-bomb. I didn't know if we were allowed to use it on the show, so I didn't. But he quite plainly said that. There's a part of us, and it made so much sense to me. It made so much sense. He talked and he labeled a part of me that I'd seen in parts of my life, all the way through my successful parts of my life, that has shown up and sabotaged my progress. And he called it Part X. And he talked about this idea that, Newton's third law of motion is that every force has an equal and opposing force. So if you have a big force for growth, so say you're a business owner, a CEO, you're a force for change and growth in your community. You've got a big force for growth. But the natural law is you're going to have an opposing force for destruction. And that's your part X. And that's the part of you that will sabotage your progress, your process, your thinking by flooding you with different, symptoms that hold you back. And when we explain this to guys, they're like, oh my gosh, I can see that. That's my part X. And that is one of the biggest breaks that I specifically have helped guys start to realize what's going on. And when you can spot this, it's almost like name it to tame it. They start to see that they can fight back against that part of themselves.
Why is that part there?
From my understanding, my limited probably understanding, is that the way that the brain works, if I can make tomorrow the same as today, I've got prediction and response. So if you think about this, like Rocky, you obviously progressive guy. Every time you progress forward, you go into the unknown, the uncertainty. Tomorrow's going to be different today. I imagine you've had moments like that in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, this is unknown territory. And if you've got a part of you that's very good at stopping you from moving forwards, it serves a purpose. It serves you from an evolutionary perspective. And it goes directly against the whole thing of Maslow needing to self-actualize and stuff like that. But everyone can acknowledge that those parts exist, right?
It makes a lot of sense because it was all about survival, physical survival more than anything. And so you don't want to go into the unknown.
Yeah, and I think this is something that I've witnessed more and more as I've learned more and more about it as well. I'll give an example of this, is that you go to do your work. You sit down, you're about to write a white paper or you're about to produce something, and then you're flooded with impulses to go and do something that is counterintuitive to what you're about to do. So for example, for a lot of guys, they're about to sit down to work and they get this overwhelming desire to go watch pornography, go and drink coffee, go for a cigarette, go and maybe start an argument with someone, go and scroll through something or other. And it takes the most valuable asset they have, which is their attention, away from what they're doing. And so 20 minutes pass, and then you go back to your desk and you have 10 minutes before your next call. Part X is to successfully sabotage you using your impulses against you. And that is something that is so pervasive, yet I think goes under the radar for so many people. And when we start to notice this part in it doing its work, that's when we've got a level playing field. Hope that makes sense, because I think sometimes explaining this is actually really, really, it's quite obvious, but at the same time, it's quite nuanced.
So the questions I have are, A, how do we have enough awareness to notice it in the moment? And then how do we stop it with minimal to no effort? Because I don't want to work hard.
Yeah. So the thing, like the tools group, Phil Stutz and Barry teach the tools. They say basically what you're doing is you've got a set of psychological tools, short visualizations, which you use in those moments to reclaim your state. Tony Robbins, you mentioned Tony Robbins before. Tony Robbins would say, just constantly stay in state, slap your face, do a rah, rah, jump around, shout and all that sort of stuff and stay in state. But at the same time, what happens to us is we drop out of a state that's conducive for moving forwards. And tools help us reclaim our state of choice, where we can make a choice to make a good choice, a choice that's going to move us forwards. And that's often what happens. Even one of the first tools that we often teach people is the reversal of desire. We see something that we want to move away from when we know we should move towards it. So something like a hard conversation with a partner, an email that needs to be sent to a coworker or a colleague, and we have some friction towards that. So what we do is instead of moving towards it, we move away. And so there's actually a short tool that you can use for that. So yeah, it's so powerful.
Brendan Burchard uses that same reframe kind of attitude. He's like, every time I go through a door frame, I touch the frame and I say, what's the frame I need to be in on the other side of this door? In the sense of I walk in the house, okay, I'm going to leave my work stuff behind. What's the frame I need to be in to serve my family? Or I walk into my office, or you walk into a meeting room. Okay, I need to reframe myself for this. It's just a reminder to kind of do that. You also said something interesting, and I've learned this in the world of finances. People always think it's about winning. Win, 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 win. In reality, you can win 100 times, especially with money. So let's just say I keep winning with money and I keep doubling it, but then I lose. So I take all my money and I times it times zero. What do you get? Nothing. And so the real game is not winning. It's not losing, never getting that zero. And maybe it takes you twice as long as you want. Cause, and I think you mentioned this earlier, you mentioned it earlier. And I see this in the world of finance too. Everybody wants to get rich overnight or lose weight in the weekend, but nobody wants to keep showing up day after day. Like let's do 75 hard. Well, you know what? How about I do 365 easy? Like, really? Because I can do 365 easy for the rest of my life. I can only do 75 hard for 75 days. And even then it's a struggle. And I don't think people talk about, hey, it's not about winning. It's about don't lose. And you don't have to work hard to do all these things. It's much more, this past, I guess it's 6 months, the coaching I've been going through is all about subtraction. I don't need more. I just need to let go. So again, it's let go of everything, do less and get more.
I love that. Yeah, I am. When you were sharing that, especially talking about like the 75 hard versus the 365 easy, it sounds like I'm such an unsexy coach with what I do, is like algorithms. And I think sometimes when people, especially in the body transformation world, they'd come in and they'd be like, right, you've got to drink 4 liters of water, you need to change everything you're eating, you need to do this, you need to exercise 3 times a week, you need to do, you need to take a cold shower, you need to do all these things. And you just look at the client and their eyes were just, and they were just in overwhelm. And the biggest and best results I ever got was like, I live in Dubai, so like I'm constantly drinking water because it's super hot here. And this is like a 2-liter flask. And I share this on so many podcasts. It's so unsexy, but I've got an algorithm. If I drink 2 of these, I am hydrated. It's kind of guaranteed. This is subconscious. It's not, I can't even remember filling this up today. And Rocky's got that cup. It's like, honestly, making it game, playing a game that you can win easy is so important, especially in behavior change. And I am actually so much in the same camp as you. Make it a game you can win.
And when it comes to finances, that's the thing. Like, Dave Ramsey's the debt guy. I don't care whether you like him or not. If you're in debt, he's a good guy to listen to. His big thing is pick the smallest debt and pay that off first. Why? Because you have a win, right? We tell people do the littlest things first and create success, because success breeds success. Too often people pick the hardest thing, don't achieve it, and give up. And then they go backwards. And so not only did they lose, but then they went negative. But if you can do little things and continue to achieve success, then over time you start to have success. BJ Fogg is the big habits guy. BJ Fogg is like, okay, if you want to floss your teeth, start with a goal of flossing 1 tooth, right? He goes, if you want to go to the gym, start with the goal of day 1, you're going to do nothing more than walk in the gym. You don't need to touch any equipment. Just go walk in the gym and do that every day. Because by the third or fourth day of walking in the gym, you're going to pick up a weight, and then you're going to pick up two, and you're going to consistently keep building and growing. You're building that slow habit. And it's the same way of building wealth. Start with $1, save $1 every day. Well, that's not a hard thing to do, right? You start saving $1 every day, and then it becomes $2 and becomes $4 and becomes $10. Pretty soon you're wealthy. It's teeny little steps. Everybody, this is the thing that drives me up the wall, and it's what I've learned here. Nobody wants to get rich slowly. Nobody wants to do anything slowly. Everybody wants it yesterday. And it's until you break that habit or that need and just say, oh, you know what? I'm going to do this little by little, step by, because that's what it is. It's, can you keep going? Can you take the next step? Because then you don't lose. You only lose when you stop taking the next step.
Yeah, the distinction there is like failure versus defeat, right? It's like failure is inevitable, defeat is a choice. And actually, when you were sharing, one of the things that I think that's helped me enormously is learning the language of my self-sabotaging thoughts. So when you were sharing about that, is that, the flossing of one tooth. Well, part X, yourself, so your inner enemy of whatever you want to call it, it has this voice saying that 10-minute run or that 20-minute gym session is not enough. So a big thing that I see, especially in so many people, is that they have massive goals. So they'd come into the space of coaching. I'm like, okay, how many times are you going to go to the gym next week? And they'll be like, I'm going to go 5. And what they'll do is I'm like, well, how many did you go last week? And they were like, 0. I'm like, you're trying to go from 0 to 5th gear, And it is actually a self-sabotaging habit. It's like, I'm going to set myself up for success. And then what happens is when I don't achieve that, I'm going to get railroaded with the most destructive language about myself. So I'm less likely to want to get up and go again. And so this is what happens with so many people, is that I have this enormous goal that I've told myself, unless I have that standard, I'm not going to move forwards. I fail, and then I give myself so much of a hard time. Am I likely to want to get up and go again? So I'm defeated. And that's actually part X's goal, to get you to be defeated versus failure. Failure is inevitable. You're gonna miss. But I think that when you get to terms with that's actually self-sabotaging behaviors and patterns, you can cut that off. Oh, I'm doing it again. I'm pushing myself way too hard. And that's how you play that game. Exactly the same game that you were talking about there, Rocky.
And it's funny because it's like climbing a ladder. Nobody focuses on what's the next rung. Just take the step, go to the next rung, and focus on that. Everybody wants to jump to the top rung. Nobody's going to make the top rung. Maybe if you get a running start, you might be able to jump up and catch the top rung. And even if you do, chances are you're going to smack into that ladder hard. So it's going to hurt when you get there, at which point maybe you got to the top rung, but the pain of holding on to it, you fall off. Either way. And I do the same thing when we sit down with business owners and we put down their finances. Sometimes they'll come to me, oh, I'm going to double sales next year. I'm like, no, you're not. We're going to set reasonable goals, because if we're halfway through the year and you haven't grown 50%, you're going to give up. You're going to be demotivated. I'd rather set a reasonable growth strategy, and then that's your stretch goal. And if you hit it, wonderful. We can build to that. But I want you to have success month after month. And I think I see this comes into every part of life.
Yeah, I was actually my partner in the space that she exists online. That you see people quoting these months like, "Oh, you can have a 5-figure month, a 6-figure month, a 7-figure month." And what I think is happening is that they have maybe 1 month at that figure, or if they're being honest, these are people that are not even the frauds, and they quote these ridiculous figures.
So I'm sure you're familiar with Russell Brunson. So he's the guy who builds all the funnels to get people to buy crap they don't need and want. And you'll see people, and it's a lot in the health space actually, because they're always selling a pill and a prescription that's going to solve your problem. No, it won't. I just had a 7-figure launch. And the first question I ask is, how much did it cost? Because more often than not, when they had a 7-figure launch, it cost them 7 figures and $1. So they worked really hard. They had a 7-figure launch and they had to pay money towards it. They didn't actually make a single penny. And so I think we get caught up in the glamour of that. It looks so great. They rented the Ferrari and they took pictures in front of someone's plane on the tarmac, and they played a game of fake to make everyone think it's all. But as soon as you lift up the covers, it's all fake. Just like the results from taking a pill. Pills are not going to necessarily cause you to gain strength and lose weight. I mean, yes, you have to be healthy and eat appropriately, but prescriptions don't solve problems. They cover up problems.
Yeah, I actually from learning from Phil this year, Phil Stutz, is that he said something. He said it in the documentary. Actually, there's three constants in life: pain, uncertainty, and constant work. And I think this is what's happening: is that people don't like that truth. There's this like feeling that I don't, or I should be somehow exonerated from that, and it's almost quite it's true. I think that's what happens is that, and do you know what? Naively, in my 20s, I thought to myself, I genuinely had this belief: if I studied enough happiness psychology, if I did enough personal development, if I made enough money, I would be exonerated from struggle. Maybe it was just like a very juvenile belief at the time. It was just a belief. And then when I thought I'd never struggle psychologically. I thought I was never going to get depressed. I thought I would never have the breakup that I had. And then when life decided to whack me around the side of the head, I had a big wake up call. But it was a gift. It was a real gift, and that's what I really, really loved about working with my mentor Yassine for the last couple of years. Like, he is very much he's a great psychotherapist, psychologist, and he has taught me so much about those principles, like the constants in life being that pain, uncertainty, and constant work. And that's been largely what I've learned for myself over the last, say, 5 years.
And that was kind of the original tagline to the podcast. You got rich, now what? Because it didn't solve all those problems, right? Okay, you got the money. You still have all the other crap you have to deal with. So now let's work on all the other crap and not lose the money doing it so that you can live the ultimate life. And I think people think it's harder than it is, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be. And the biggest thing I find is people have not defined what they want. Or their definition, going back to the book that you mentioned, they're climbing the first mountain because that's what they were told. It's really the second mountain where you have the fulfillment, because you've actually gone, oh, that was all BS. This is truly what I want. Having the courage to get off the first mountain, having the courage to stop near the top of the first mountain and say, I'm not going anymore. I'm going to go actually climb a different mountain because I put my ladder against the wrong wall. And we've had a lot of people who've had to do that. But most people don't define what they want, and they aren't willing to do the work to get there.
Yeah, I agree. And actually in the book, he talks about this idea that in the first mountain is hedonistic pleasure. So the first mountain is about the money, the cars, the relationships, all the trappings of wealth. And then the second mountain is eudaimonic pleasure, which is having a good soul. And that for me was a huge one. I wanted to have way more deep conversations with people. I didn't want shallow relationships. The other thing that was coming up is that this changed my life. This thinking changed my life. Is that Abraham Maslow, famous American psychologist, talked about what one can be, one must be, and famously said, if you plan on being anything less than you're capable of being, you'll be unhappy for the rest of your life. And I'll say that again, is like, if you plan on being anything less than you're capable of being, you'll be unhappy the rest of your life. And I had this told to me by my mentor again and again and again and again. And it's like, what we actually have to do in this phase of our life is like, what are we capable of? It's just a test. It's just a game. Like, what can we achieve? What we're doing it purely for the love of like, how much can I test what I'm capable of doing? And the thinking that really helped bring it home for me is that in any moment, we're making one of two decisions. We're either choosing to move forward into growth, the pain, we're talking about before, is like we're trying to move toward it. We're choosing the uncomfortable conversation. We're going to do the uncomfortable weight session. We're going to eat the broccoli instead of the cookie. And when we make enough uncomfortable decisions, we end up in growth. So when inevitably life waxes around the head, we don't go from a 1 to a -5 and end up depressed. We go from an 8 to a 1. So we're still moving forwards. We're still in growth. Whereas I think what happened in parts, and I've seen this with clients, is that they live their life at 0 in a very, very dangerous area. So what happens is they make a couple of growth decisions, then they make a couple of comfortable decisions, then a couple of growth decisions, and they kind of zigzag. And then when a business breakdown, a relationship breakdown, it's a hard part of the economy, shows its head, they don't end up at -1, they end up at -5, which is psychopathological feelings like anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And I think that that's what I've seen in so many men. They make comfortable decision after comfortable decision, and then they turn around and they're like, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I feel really like I want to take my own life. And they're like, I don't know how I got here. And I'm like, you've made comfortable decision after comfortable decision. And for me, that really set me free, knowing that that's why I choose the pain. That's why I choose the discomfort. Not that I, do ice baths every day or, do some weird, sadistic stuff to hurt myself. But I choose to do that long run on a Sunday and eat well. And I think that for me, especially in my 30s and beyond, that's been almost my narrative, and it's really helped me.
It comes back to what I said before. Just don't lose. And what I mean by don't lose is don't go below 0, right? Make sure that you have, this literally comes down to what I call margin. Make sure you have margin. Make decisions that allow you to fail, but still allow you to survive, right? And especially like people, I'm gonna start a business. Okay. Do you have a year or 2 years of money to pay your home bills? That's margin, right? Do you have the money? Have you sat down and run the numbers to see what it's going to take you to get from where you are to where your financial goal is? Do you have the cash to get you there? Have you thought about what it needs and what it's going to take to get you from where you are to where you want to go? And the funny thing is, people don't realize this. A lot of businesses fail because of growth. They have unprecedented growth, but they fail because they have no fuel. They have no cash to get to where they want to go. So it's sitting down and just plotting out the journey. I tell people, plane takes off in LA, it figures out how to land at JFK, right? It's off course the entire time. Headwinds, weather, all kinds of things are happening, turbulence. And yet they've got a good dashboard. They've done the math. They know I've got to keep course correcting little changes over time, and you keep going towards that destination. But make sure you want to go to New York before you take off, because otherwise you'll spend a lot of time going the wrong way, the first mountain.
Yeah. Because I remember actually, even in the gym, like you saying about growth costing money. I remember most of the money I made in my early 20s, I spent on growth. And people are like, well, Ben, you're doing really, really well. I'm like, yeah, I might be doing well, but I've got an expensive personal development habit, and I've got a lovely gym with lots of new equipment. It's just that, and that's why I had to show for it.
And honestly, most of the people I think that I've met who've had success in life have, including myself, a very expensive personal growth habit. And you spend, honestly, you spend a portion of your income should be devoted to you growing forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not something I usually fuss too much about. You just keep doing it.
Yeah, I definitely think it. If I was to look back, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, the struggles I've been through, my mindset has been so consistent, and I think that's something that I'm extremely disciplined around. Is my mindset, and I think that's been one of the biggest things I can see for me and the people I've worked with. Is like, if you've got someone who's got a disciplined mind, they can weather so many storms.
It all comes down to discipline. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
To keep giving. I think that's something that I've always been in service. As long as I'm keeping giving, it comes back tenfold.
That's a Zig Ziglar thing, right?
I know.
Isn't it?
I just
always
that,
serve others. He's help enough people get what they want, and you'll get what you want.
I actually haven't followed Zig Ziglar. Actually, more Steve Chandler. So yeah, just be in service. Just be in service, and it always comes back.
It does. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Reactive discipline. So we talked earlier about discipline is the ability in the moment to take a beat, take a breath, pause, and choose my reaction to a set of circumstances.
And that's Viktor Frankl, right?
It is very much
between
so, yeah.
The action and the reaction is that moment. And the person who can control that moment controls their life. But we never, they don't teach that in school, and we don't practice it like at the gym, right? We don't practice. Wait, stop. Oh, I got to react. Hold on.
I got a choice in this. Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Oh, wow. That's my 18-year-old self. Just, wow, that's a really, really good. So I actually, we were talking about Steve Hardison. And I went to see him in Arizona last year when I was working with a friend. And he said, imagine you'd saved 10% of your earnings since you were 18. Where would you be today? And it hit me so hard. I wanted to cry. So I think that would actually be the piece of advice. It's like, hey, just 10%, put it away. Don't touch it. It's going to pay dividend. And that would have been just the most incredible piece of advice.
So I did that, but I was 4 years late. I started at 22 after I got out of college.
That's great.
If people would like to learn more about you, your coaching, what's the best way for them to find out?
Yeah, thank you, Rocky. The best place to find me is Coach Benjamin Owen on Instagram, and just info at Coach Benjamin Owen. Like I'm one of those people that just loves to have a good conversation and find out how I can support you in your personal and professional challenges.
And we will put that in the show notes. Was there something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, we also my co-host Pete Taylor and I we have a podcast called the Awakened Man Podcast. It's about two guys in the mid-30s going through the process of building a family, creating a business, and all the struggles that come with post-divorce relationships. And it's been really, really successful. And we love talking about everything from money to relationships to sex to men's work. So feel free to check us out there.
And Pete was on here, and I'm pretty sure I was on with him, but I think you were away. You were busy that day.
Yeah, but no, I would love to have you come on and talk about some money, Rocky. That I think I'd love to have you on the podcast as well.
Happy to do that. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed that conversation with Ben. So here's the question. What's one area of your life that you can take one tiny step towards winning? It's about not losing, and winning small over time consistently turns into winning big in the game of life. And that's what this is always about. We went back to the beginning with money. It's not going to give you the ultimate life if you give up everything else to get it. By the way, this is how 99% of the world lives. So it's up to you to be the part, that 1% that truly gets to live it fully out. By the way, if you know someone who would appreciate this episode, would you do me a favor and share it with them? Next week, we've got Graham Lutz on. We're going to talk about the willingness to be wrong, which is powerful. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.